All right, so essentially today we're going to be making an AI-powered recipe generator for like Thanksgiving foods. So the requirements for this app are that we're going to be making ChatGPT generated recipes. The user's going to select all the ingredients that they want. They're going to be allowed to add in some modifiers like low calorie or low carb. And then it's going to generate like multiple potential recipes that the users can pick from. Then if they want, they should be able to save their past recipes. All right, so because we're going to be using ChatGPT once again, I prepared the prompts already in advance so that we don't have to figure out what to do for each prompt. So these are the two that we'll be using on the slideshow. You can like copy and paste them later. And then now we can get started in making and setting up our components. So today, we're also going to be like figuring out the whole coding process. So we're going to be making all the blocks in real time with like the full logic and everything. So first, let's just get started with our components though. We're gonna have screen one be our starting screen. We're gonna need a title at the top so that the people know what they're going into. Let's say font size 36, so it's big. Width, it's gonna be full and it's gonna be center line. Let's just say recipe generator. All right, so now under this, we're gonna need a button so that they can actually move on to the next page so that they can generate the recipes that they want to. So let's call this generate new recipe. Make this be full width. Then we're gonna also want to show the users the recipes that they've already saved. So to do that, we're gonna have a new label here. Say font size 24, saved recipes. Underline that with max width. Now we're gonna have a block of all the recipes, and we're gonna do this with a list view. To make it look good, we're gonna have no background color and have the color be black. And then to make it fill up the rest of the screen, we're gonna do height fill parent. All right, so this is our intro screen done. So now, next thing we need is a page where they can actually generate the recipe. So to do that, they're gonna need to put in some inputs. So we can add new screen. Let's call this one inputs. Add this status bar and title. All right, so now we're gonna have another label. This is gonna be called ingredients. So this is essentially where the user is going to type in their ingredients that they want to put into their food, or like whatever they have available. So once again, centerline this. Where this is going to be a text box where they can type the stuff in. And then you want to make this fill up the parent's width, so it's functional. Then after the ingredients, we also want potential modifiers. So let's make a new label, like copy and paste, call this one modifiers. And then we can have a couple switches. So we're gonna have this be full width. And let's say the first one was low calorie. Next one could be low carbs. All right, then after our modifiers, we want to make a button to generate recipe and the button to go back to the home screen. So this one will be generate. Full width, you can copy and paste this, and then this one will be to go back. All right, so then once they go to the ingredients page and then they type in all the ingredients and modifiers that they want, we're going to want to display some potential recipes for them to choose from. So let's make a new screen. Call it some recipes. All right, hide the status and title once again. Put our own title at the very top with a label. Center line text 24 font size, so it's full. All right, then we're gonna want a list view so that they can see all the different recipes that they can choose from. Once again, make it look good. No background, black text, bold height. Now, after that, we're gonna want to have a back button. So put this in here. Actually, I think we already have one. Yep, that's back. All right, so now after we generate, after they see a bunch of potential recipes. All right, so now that we have our list of recipes, once they pick one, they should be able to view like the full recipe. So to do that, we're gonna add one more screen. This will show the actual recipe that they're going to be making. Let's just call this one recipe. Hide the title and status bar. Add a label in. 24. Full parents. Centered. Then this is going to be where the food name is going to be. So let's just put in placeholder. Food name, or we can even just like say like some default thing like turkey. All right. Then we're going to want to have our instructions down here. So that'd be another label. So for example, let's say ingredients. Let's have this be where doesn't like to do that. That's fine. So let's just be our steps. Let's just write it down like this. And then we're gonna have a back button and a save button. This one will be back. This one will be save. So from this screen, we should be able to save and unsave recipes from our list that we have on screen one. All right, to get started, let's think about screen one. So on screen one, we're gonna want to first display the saved recipes. And then we're also gonna have our generate new recipe button be able to send us to the next screen. So first, let's just add some labels to all of our components. So this button will be generate recipe. And this list view will be where our saved recipes are. So let's just call this saved recipes. All right, so this looks good. So now let's get started with adding some components that are hidden so that we can interact with them on the blocks. So first of all, because we want to access our saved recipes, we're going to need a TinyDB instance. Since TinyDB is where we store data on our device, so if we want to access our saved recipes, we're going to need to use this. And then to move to the next page with generate new recipe, that's fairly easy. So first of all, let's get this button. So then when we want to click this, we want it to send us to the next page, which will be the inputs. And now because we have back buttons and all, we will just have a direct open new screen. So this will essentially add a new layer on top of our previous screen. We won't just be swapping the screens so that it's easier to go back a screen. So to do that, let's go back into screen one, go into our blocks, and when you click your new recipe, it should open up this new page. So control, open another screen. Then we're going to want to open up the inputs. That's good. So now we need to figure out how to do our save recipes. So whenever we initialize screen one, we want to set up all the save recipes once again. So we're going to have this screen one.initialize. And the way we're probably going to make this work is that TinyDB, it stores essentially, if we look in here, it stores a bunch of keys and values and their pairs. And then we can also get a list of all the different keys and values that we have stored with this get tags. This will, as you can see, if we hover over this, it gives us a list of all the different tags in the data store. So the way we're probably going to format this, that will have every single key be a different recipe name. And then inside of it, its value will just be the entire string recipe. So when we initialize our string, we want to go into tinydb. We want to get all the tags. And then for each of these, we want to add a new recipe. So let's do save recipes. And then we can probably just put this directly inside here with the string, since we don't have any detail text or images. It's just main text. So we're going to go into save recipes, go into, let's see, elements from string. Take this, move this in here. Then we're going to want to set the elements to this array of tags, except it's separated by commas, as you can see if we go into here. The elements from string. So it'll be separated by commas. So what we're going to do is going to text. See what this is list maybe? Let's see. Yep. Join items using a separator. And our list is going to be our tags, and then the separator is going to be a comma. So it will generate each thing separately. All right, so now that we have our screen one complete, let's move on to our inputs. So first of all, we want to have them input their ingredients. So let's rename this to just ingredients. Our first switch is for low calorie, so let's just name it accordingly. Low calorie. Then this switch will be called, let's say, low carbs. All right, then we have our generate button. Yes, the ChatGPT will be supplying the instructions. The users will just be picking a recipe that ChatGPT generates. So it'll like generate a list of potential recipes for them to pick. They'll pick the recipe, and then it will print out the full recipes that they can follow. All right, so our first button is the generate button. And our second button is our back button. So the easiest thing to create right now is the back button. So let's just implement that very quickly. So whenever they click back, because App Inventor works on a system where the screens are stacked on top of each other, we're just going to want to close this screen. So to do that, we can just do controls, and then we can just close the screen when they click back. All right, so now we need to focus on getting all the information out of here when they click generate. So when they click the generate button, we need to capture this event. We need to first prepare our prompt. But before we do that, we need to put in a chatbot component. So this is essentially how we're going to be interfacing with ChatGPT. So we're going to be putting in data through this chatbot thing, and it will give us back the stuff we need. All right, so we're going to want to ask the chatbot a question. And then to properly format this, we're going to need a big join statement. All right, so now if we look back at our prompts, our first one is the one that just generates the list of all the potential foods that the user could choose to make. So to do this, we're going to ask ChatGPT to give, let's say, 5 potential Thanksgiving foods they can make using. And then we're going to have our ingredients list here and our modifiers here. And we want to separate each food with a comma and have nothing else. So we have this final line here so that we can format the data in a way that we can easily extract and then parse. And then we tell it to have nothing else, since ChatGPT has a habit of being like, okay, here you go, before it gives you any of the actual data. And that would like screw stuff up. All right, so let's go into here. Text. We're just going to take the first part. Give me 5 potential Thanksgiving foods I can make using yeah, I'm going to screenshot the code and then put it in the slides afterwards. All right, so now that we have this, give me 5 potential Thanksgiving foods I can make using. We need to put our ingredients in. So to do that, let's do ingredients and then get the text. All right. And then we don't actually know if there are any modifiers or not, which is like low calorie or low carbs. So let's first put an if statement in here. Let's add a couple fields to this join so that we can put in some more text elements. So first we want to check if any of the modifiers are turned on. So we want to check if any of these are true. So let's do these conditionals. So we do this with what's it? Low calorie dot on. So if either one of these is on low calorie or low carbs, then we want to include the second message. So let's add in another piece of text. So then space that R. Then we want to include all these different modifiers. So then we can want to add join statements. So then if low calories on, let's see. Uh, so we're going to do it this way. I'm going to have a list. We're going to put these all into a list. And then we are going to, let's see. Append them all. It's there. So to do that, let's add a new local variable instead. Put this in here. We'll have these be our modifiers. We'll start off as an empty list, and then we'll have a couple if statements to check if each low calorie and thing is on. So if low calorie is on, then we're going to want to append low calorie, that text, to the list of modifiers. So let's add items. Our list will be our list of modifiers, and here this local variable that we're creating. And our item will be low calorie. So this will just be some text. Then we want to do the same thing with low carbs. So then we're back to this join statement. We want to now put in this list of modifiers. To do that, we're going to do join using separator. Then do a comma space in here. And our list will be this list of modifiers that we set up before. All right, so now after this, we set up our modifiers, and we need to have this separate each food with gum and have nothing else part. So we actually added in one extra string there, so we can get rid of that. Then you want to tell it to separate. So first, let's actually have a period space. Separate each food with a comma and have nothing else. Do you guys have any questions at this moment, by the way, on what's happening, why some of the components are the way they are? All right, nice. Okay, so now that this first ChatGPT statement is put down, when ChatGPT we ask it anything, it will take a while to give a response back. So MIT App Inventor does this with handles this with events, so that we have this when ChatGPT get response. So this will just fire after this chatbot is done conversing. And this response text will be just that. So let's actually open up ChatGPT. And let's give this some this potential prompt, and then let's give it some data to figure out what the exact format of it's going to be like. So we paste this in here. Let's give it a list of modifiers like turkey, uh, cranberries, stuffing, maybe blueberries, and pumpkin. And for our modifiers, let's also just say low calorie. All right, so if we look at what ChatGPT responded with, as you can see, each of these is separated with a singular comma and a space afterwards. So to parse this response, we're going to want to actually, we can handle the parsing the response in the next screen and then just give it back some text. So that all the next screen has to do is just display it. So when it gets back its response, we're going to want to open up the next page with this control, open next screen with start value. Then this will want to open up the list of potential recipes. Then for our start value, we're going to want to split up this list of ingredients. And here our start value is going to be our ChatGPT's response. And then we're going to want to split it by this comma space delimiter. So let's go to this text. See if it's here. That's that. All right, it's in list. Join, slide, max, sorted. All right. So it is probably this split text. Then we're going to want to split the text at these comma spaces. And to confirm that this does what we think it is, we can look up the MIT App Inventor documentation. So MIT App Inventor, let's say string methods. Let's see that split app. This actually looks like the old App Inventor. Let's see if they have anything newer set up. There you go. This is the new documentation. All right, so as we can see, if they split 1, 2, 3, 4 at comma, it'll return the list 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is what we want to happen with our ChatGPT response. So this is looking good. All right, so does everyone understand what's happening on our input screen and our screen one? Any questions? All right, so then we can move on to our next screen, which will be the list of recipes. So now this list of recipes will take in this full list. So we need to load this first into our list view. So let's give us some namings. Let's call this recipes. Let's call this button our back button. So as we can see, our back button, we can do the same thing as last time since it just opens up the new screen on top of the back click. So when the user clicks back, we want to close the screen once again. Okay, so now we need to handle the loading data into this recipes list. So when we initialize this screen, we want to take the recipes that we took in from the previous screen, which is in the list. We get that with control start value, I think. Yeah, I guess start value. Then we want to take this list and then we want to put these recipes into it. Actually, because we're now handling this using the commas with this element with string, we can actually go back into our input screen and fix this up so that it just gets sends back the response test. We don't even need to split the string anymore. So then in our recipes, we can just take our recipes and then set our elements. Use set elements from string to our start value. All right, so now this should essentially load up all of our data points into here. So now that they're loaded into here, let's put an example in here. So I'm going from string. Let's just copy ChatGPT's response, put that in here. Okay, so this is essentially what our data output will look like. So when the user clicks on one of these recipes, ideally we just straight up send them to our recipes page. Sorry, our recipe page so that they can see it. So to do this, we're going to check if they select any of these recipes. So whenever they click one of these, it runs this recipes.afterPicking event. So then we want to take this. After they pick, we want to ask ChatGPT another question. So let's go back into our experimental, put in this chatbot elements. And then we're going to want to ask it this next prompt. So you're going to want to ask it to give us the recipe for the food. So that will be our the selection that only uses ingredients and the modifiers. And then we want to have the ingredients list, recipe, and nothing else. So because we actually need our ingredients and modifiers from the previous screen, we're going to want to go back and then figure out how to bring this into the recipe screen without losing any of this, let's see, ingredients or modifiers data. So what we can do is we can extract this modifier since we're going to need it later. We can do that so in a procedure. So to get modifiers, For this, call this modifiers, put in a do result. Return the modifiers. Then we're going to have this if low calorie, blah, blah, blah. Put this instead. So now this get modifiers, a procedure, will take in this list of modifiers. It'll do the checks. I have to reselect this since it's technically a variable. And then it will return the list of modifiers joined with a comma. So let's go into here. Then instead of like having this block inside of here, we can just call the get modifiers procedure. Put this back in here and delete this variable call. So what we essentially did is we extracted one of our one-time use, one of the code blocks, and then we extracted it into a procedure so that we can run it multiple times easily. So that's a big thing you usually do in coding when your code base starts to get a little more complex and you start reusing more things. And this makes things so it modularizes it so that when you're debugging, you only have to deal with what you know works and doesn't work. And you're allowed to reuse things in more places. All right, so now that we have this, we want to return both the modifiers and the ingredients. So let's do that with a dictionary. So this dictionary is essentially a list of key value pairs, the same as this, what's it? TinyDB component. Except this time it's not stored locally on the user's device, and then it's just quickly put into their memory and then lost. So let's make a new dictionary. We're going to want 3 values. So our list of foods is going to be the response ChatGPT gives back. Our ingredients is going to be what ChatGPT, what the user puts in with this ingredients.txt. And then our list of modifiers is going to be given with this get modifiers procedure. So get modifiers. This is just going to be this call modifiers list that joins this with their comments. All right, so now we have all this data, we can go back into our recipes. We can no longer do just this get start value because it's now in the dictionary. So what we do is we take this dictionary, we select the value. Our dictionary is our start value. And the key, once again, as you see in here, is food list. Here. So then after they pick, you want to ask the chatbot for some more data. So let's once again put this join statement in here. Put in a load of strings once again. And let's get started on our prompts. So give me a recipe for, give a recipe for, end quotes. Then we want to do the food that gets selected. So to do that, we're going to want our recipes. And then that is its selection. So this list view component allows them recording. I'd like the app and club what's it website people to answer that for you. All right, so the way list view works is that it has two different ways you can access the selection. One is with this recipes.selection, and the other one is with the selection index. So our selection index is just the 1, 2, 3, 4 number of where the thing we selected is. We don't really need that right now, so we can just get this selection directly through this. All right, so now that we have this give me recipe for and then our selection, add some more text that only uses, so space, that, space, only, space, uses, space. Then we need to have this space at the front and spaces at the back so that it works correctly. Then we want to insert the user's ingredients. So once again, we're going to want to get this from the start value, except instead of food list, we look back in our inputs code, this is just ingredients. So I put this in here. Then once again, we want to check if we have any modifiers. So if So let's check if the modifier from previous inputs is actually there, then we'll have to actually put that text. But if it's not, then it will just be some empty string. So we can compare this text with just an empty string. So if this really is, actually let's just have this not equal to. So if this isn't just an empty string, then that means there is data inside. We're gonna have a block of text join and is. We want to put in our modifiers. But if it is really just nothing, then we can just return nothing. So it looks like we need to add another string here. Then now we have our period space. Give me the ingredients list, recipe, nothing else. So we specifically outlined what we want ChatGPT to return, which is the ingredient list and recipe, so that they can follow it. And we want to save nothing else, just so, again, we don't have that sure, here you go issue. So now once this is done, we want to go in and open the next screen, which is our recipe. So to do that, after our chatbot gets its response back, we want to open up that new screen. And then its start value will be the recipe that gets returned. That's in response text. But then once again, from before, we're also going to need the name of the food that we're trying to cook, so that when we save it, it can get put into the TinyDB under the right name. So let's go back to the recipes. So then when they open up this recipe screen, we're gonna have a new dictionary. Let's say the one for food name, let's just call this food. And the value is going to be the current selection of this recipes component. So if we select turkey salad, the food name would be turkey salad. So then for our next key, we're going to want to have the recipe. So our key will, let's just call it recipe. And the value is just going to be our start text. All right, we got rid of this one now. Let's actually quickly go back and clean up all of our blocks so that they all look nice. All right, so now it goes on to this next recipes page. And then now we just need to display the name of the recipe and then the actual like how to make it with all the ingredients and stuff. So before we do that, we need to give all these things names. So this is going to be our food. This is going to be our recipe. Oops, let me just use the capital. And our buttons, this is our back button. And this is our save button. All right, so now we have our back and save button done. Now we can get started. So when we initialize this, we want to load up the food name and recipe in there. So let's just quickly put this in. Set the food text to. Now, if we look in our recipes once again, we said we called this one food. So we want to get the key for the value. Our dictionary is going to be our start value. And we're going to want to do the same thing except for the recipe. So we check to make sure. Yep, those called recipes in our previous code. Now let's implement the back button. So when they click back, it should close this screen. Since you should be able to access the recipe from this screen one when you click the recipe, and then from this recipes list when you click it. Let's get rid of this. Actually, we can keep that since it'll just directly overwrite it instantly. All right, so now that we have our recipe and back button done, now we just need to implement save. So when we click this save button, there's actually two things that can happen. So first of all, this we don't know right now whether or not this recipe is or is not currently already stored. So to do that, we need to check. So let's put in our tinydb components from before. So now we want to check if it's saved or not. So let's see. Tags, clear tag. And the tag that we're looking for is the food name. Right from here. All right, so if this food tag exists, then it will just return back this recipe. So this string will be there. But if it's not, then it will instead return this false. So if the food already is there, then we want to unsave it. So we're going to want to toggle this text. So we actually need to go into here. Put this in here. And then to toggle the text, you just set the save buttons text right here. So if it's already saved, then we need to tell it to unsave. And if it's not, then we need to tell it to save. And then this will be the opposite here, and I'll show you guys why. All right, so if it's currently unsaved, if it's currently saved, then we're going to want to unsave it. And to do that, we're going to do tinydb1.clearTag. Another tag is once again going to be this food. All right, and then if it's not saved, then we want to, that's in this else by the way, we want to save it. So we're going to do tinydb1 dot store value. Our tag is going to be our food, and then the value that we store is going to be the actual recipe. So put this in here. All right, so now we have this set to save and unsave here, and it's this way because if the food is currently already saved, then this save button will unsave it. So then we need to reset the button text to save, and then it'll work the opposite way for unsave. So we clean this up. Now our save and unsave is worked and functioning. Now we just need to implement it from screen 1, since right now we just have the inserting of all the recipes. So just like before, whenever they click a recipe, save recipes tab after picking, we want to open up this recipe with the tag and value. So I don't want to open up the new screen. We'll just start value. So it's going to be a recipe screen. We look back into our recipes plural. Let's just put this into our dictionary. Sorry, our backpack. And take that this way. All right, so this time our food is going to be our saved recipes.selection. And then the recipe will be whatever it is in this tinydb. So you're going to want to get the value for the tag. That is this food, which is the selection. All right, so now that we have all of our code and stuff functioning, this is what now we have what we have. This is called a MVP, which is our minimum viable product. This doesn't really have any styling, so it looks kind of ugly, but this still is working and functioning. So now that everything is actually working, now we can go in and start making everything look a little better. So let's say we can take this button, we can color it green. Yep, sure. This is the code for screen 1. You're welcome. All right, so now that we can start configuring stuff, let's say we can make this generate new recipe button a little bit bigger. So let's say it'll be 24 font size since we want to be big and clear to the user that this is how you do it. Let's have a background color sort of akin to like a green sort of to tell them to click on it. Gonna be pretty dark so that let's see. Just do a pretty pale green. And instead of having its full width, we can have it set to automatic and just have this be directly in the center. To do that, we're going to need the horizontal arrangements. Have this be instead full width. Have this button take, let's say, 80% of it. Then this will just align horizontally in the center. And now we're going to have this generate recipe button. Let's say, where's the corners? Let this be rectangular. So instead of rectangular, we're going to give it a little bit of rounded corners. And then let's say give this a little bit extra height. So let's say 30 pixels maybe. 60. So now this generate new recipe button is nice and clear at the top of the screen, and then it's easier for them to choose. Let's do the same thing for the rest of these buttons. So these inputs are a little small, so we can make them a little bigger. Let's say with 18 font size. Our ingredients list. Let's give this an example. So inside our hint button, we can say, e.g., turkey, cranberries, stuffing. Then our generate button, gonna be nice and green, big. And then we can actually, instead of having these on top of each other, just put them directly next to each other. So we do that for another horizontal arrangement, full width, right here and back in here. And our back button will be some form of red. So it's like this. Oops. I'll just be this dark red so we can have our text be white. So it pops up against that. Let's make it just a little bit bigger, maybe 24. Same thing for our generate button. Round off these corners too, since whenever you round something, it looks a little better. Then let's do the same thing we did with the generate button. So around the corners, have this be, once again, this light pale green or some sort. All right, so now this is looking much better. And if we want to, we can even put these at the bottom of our screen. So to do that, we are going to just make this max height and then just align these to the bottom. Now these two will be at the bottom. Go into our recipes, do the same back button. So we actually already stylized this. So let's just copy and paste it. Set copy back our code from back here. So this is also why whenever you copy and paste stuff, you usually want to let's see, do it before you add code in, or unless you're trying to directly put in the code intentionally. Since this isn't the old background code, this is actually the code that got brought in from our inputs. All right, so now this is looking pretty good. Let's go to our recipes. We can do the same thing. Another new back button. And then do the same thing with our save. So 24 font size. Nice and rounded. Text color. Let's make this one like a nice blue or something. Oops, that's a text color. Yeah, so now we have back and save, and then our steps. All right, so now we've gone past the minimum viable product and develop something that looks a little better. Oh, actually, before we do that, we can do the same horizontal arrangement stuff that we did last time to put these two buttons at the bottom. So full width, back, save, and then make a horizontal arrangement big, and then slide it to the bottom. All right, so now that we're looking good, our app is ready. So you guys can test it. I'm not going to do that on here since it's kind of hard to show. And the ChatGPT extension on here sometimes doesn't really work unless you put in your own tokens. So I will post the code onto the slideshow. So I'll do that right now really quickly. Inputs, do the same thing. So you can do what I'm doing and then screenshot each one, or MIT App Interacts has a function where if you right click, you can download the blocks, just add to like a PNG image. Do the same thing with our recipes. And finally do the same thing with our recipe. Zoom in a little bit more so that's clear. And now we're looking good. Everything is back in here. All right, so one more thing before you guys leave. I'd like you guys to know that whenever you're doing this ChatGPT prompt engineering, you got to make sure you spend a lot of time to make sure you repeatedly test it over and over again with a couple different inputs so that most of the time it returns the data that you want. And because it's still ChatGPT generative AI, sometimes it's not in the right format that you want. So you got to make sure you handle those errors if they occur pretty nicely when you're making like fully fledged apps. All right, so that concludes this class though. Thank you guys for attending, and I'll see you guys later.